Hello Norwich, midsummer blessings to you all. Shame we can't meet in real life, but this is the next best thing. My name's Adrian Chamberlin. I was born in Cardiff in the early 70s, lived in Cambridge for a bit, now live in sunny South Oxfordshire, in a place called Wallingford, which serves as a backdrop to the village of Corston in Midsummer Murders. So if you ever fancy coming down to suffer a statistically improbable and painful death, I'll be your guide. I'm going to read two pieces for you. The first one is a flash piece called Darker Than Blindness that was published by Flametree Press last year. And the other piece is the opening chapter of a short story called Serpents of Albion, which is a Lovecraftian retelling of King Arthur's Fall. And it was published in this book, Sword and Mythos, by Innsmouth Free Press in 2014. So, let's start with the creepy stuff. This is Darker Than Blindness. The noose tightening around your neck almost comes as a relief, does it not? It's the hood that came over your head moments before that had you gasping, panicking, striking out at the guards. They expected the struggle, believing it to be the last futile fight for life a condemned man makes. They tightened their grip on your shoulders, anticipating more frenzied struggles when the noose lowered. Your gasp of relief, the sudden relaxation of your tensed muscles, your nervous, almost hysterical laughter strangled by the tightened rope and muffled by the coarse Hessian takes them by surprise. We know why, don't we? Even the priest suspects. He hesitates in his reading, and I smell the Bible's leather covers, perfumed by the sweat from his fingers. I can imagine him looking around the dimly lit execution cell, his eyes widening as he gazes into the shadows the single bare, low-wattage light bulb fails to disperse. He sees something. Perhaps he sees me. No. He may sense my presence, but he cannot see me. Only those who walk in darkness can truly see. I can hear your pounding heartbeat. I can feel it slamming against your ribcage. I can feel your hot, hyperventilating breath trapped in the hood, a sirocco blasting your senses from all directions. You're desperate, pleading almost, for the trapdoor to open, for the rope to tighten when your body plummets, to snap your vertebrae. No, this moment must last a little longer. As long as it did for your victims, for those you denied sight before taking their lives. You owe us that much. What are you most fearful of? The dark? The encompassing blackness that will be your last memory before travelling to the true void that awaits all? Or is it my voice whispering in your ear? It's the former, of course. My voice you dismiss as a phantom, a hallucination brought on by the stress and anxiety of the last few years in jail, when appeal after appeal fell by the wayside, the faces of the family who disowned you fading into nothingness. Guilt should have been your companion, your comfort, knowing you would soon atone for your evil deeds with your life. But no, even now, on the edge of the abyss, a few inches of wood temporarily separating you from oblivion, you still have no doubt in the righteousness of your actions. You cling to the religious zealot's belief that the killings were necessary sacrifices, rather than the insane murders they truly are. They say The moment before one's death feels an eternity. This I know from experience. This limbo is hell. The same limbo, the same hell you consigned us to. It is time for you to taste some of that. A cry of recognition. Yes. You accept the truth now, do you not? You know my voice. Is it not ironic that you last heard it accompanied by the sight of my screaming face, my eyes beseeching yours for mercy, before your scalpel took them from me, when now you see nothing and you scream for mercy? Yes, ironic. I begged for life. You beg for death. You fear the darkness for what it presages, and you are right to do so. I feared that darkness until, just before I died, I saw the things that lurk in the shadows of our perception. Creatures darker than blindness itself. They were waiting for me. They welcomed me. They granted me their powers, one of which is to see in ways I never could as a living, fully sighted human being. Oh, the wonders and horrors I have beheld. You will witness them too. But they will not be as welcome to your vision. The trapdoor opens, and I hear you plunge into a new darkness. And yet, your vertebrae haven't snapped, and your thrashing body draws disbelieving cries from the priest and the hangman. The latter is a seasoned professional, and he knows he has not miscalculated the rope length or your body weight. As I said, the creatures in the shadows welcomed me, granted me their powers, one of which is over physical objects. Now you face a hanging death the old way, via slow strangulation. Your terror has a physical presence. I can see it. The blackness of your vision is punctured by starbursts of scarlet and gold as asphyxiation takes its hold. But it does not last. The darkness remains as the stars die. The darkness always remains. It is the light that is ephemeral. I have embraced the darkness, become one with it. For me, there is nothing to fear. But for you, I welcome you to the void, as do my brothers and sisters of the Shadowland. They are pleased to reacquaint themselves with their murderer, and to show him the true meaning of darkness, what it means to fear. So, enough of the light, frivolous stuff. Let's get on the nasty, horrible, Lovecraftian Camelot. Okay. So, The Serpents of Albion, 2014. Doesn't time fly? Let's go. Bedivere rode into the sunrise, leaving Arthur alone with the slain warriors and the creature that had caused their deaths. The knight's helm and mail armour flared gold in the rising sun, briefly hiding the scarlet gore of battle and bloodshed. It reminded Arthur of his brotherhood of knights' former glory, how they were like shining gods riding to battle evildoers, to uphold the laws of Arthur's kingdom and ensure the land prospered for all. The dream of Camelot had ended. This was the reality of Arthur's reign, a charnel pit of twitching corpses, of man and horse bleeding their last together, of raptors gorging on the flesh of fallen warriors, and flies secreting eggs into the flesh wounds of dead knights. The realization it was all over, that Albion would become chaos once more, pained Arthur more than the head wound from Mordred's broadsword. "Oh, Merlin, did you not foresee this evil? Why did I not listen to you, old friend?" He closed his eyes against the sun's glare. He kept them shut, despite the tears that welled and demanded release. He didn't want to see the departure of Excalibur, the sword that made him king, that united him with the land he had conquered, ruled, loved, and now lost. He cried out softly, and a raven looked up from its feast of entrails. It flapped its wings once, and then resumed its meal. Only the sinuous approach of the serpent along the churned mud, as inexorable as death, made the carrion bird fly from the corpse. Arthur's head drooped. Bedivere had attempted to remove the king's dented helm with its dragon circlet, but the steel was too deeply embedded into the skull. The crown of a warrior king, now a burden, one Arthur would wear until death. The snake extended its tongue, caressing the charnel air with relish. Arthur shifted, moved his stiffening body in an attempt to stave off death's advance. Bedivere had fashioned a crude support for his king, with blankets and saddlebags, but it gave little comfort. When Arthur's vision clouded and lightheadedness returned, he felt Bedivere had propped him against the mouldering bones of long-fallen warriors, their skeletal fingers piercing his side for warm, fresh blood and sustenance. Then the spell passed, and he realized the protrusions were nothing but the stirrups and pommel of the saddle, shifting as it sank into the churned mud of the battlefield. The hoofbeats of Bedivere's mount, slow and glutinous as the destrier picked its way through the marshy ground of the battlefield, faded from hearing. Now only the buzzing of flies and the harsh cries of the gluttonous ravens filled Arthur's ears. The snake's inexorable approach reminded him of why this had come to pass. "Men fight and die for an ideal, Arthur," Guinevere had once said. "What glory is there in that? God does not approve. God hides his face from the battlefield." He opened his eyes, wincing with the pain of bright golden light from the mocking sun. Bedivere had departed the plain of Camlan, now descended into the valley, and beyond that to the lake where Excalibur's creators, and, Arthur finally admitted to himself, its true owners, waited to reclaim the sword. He remembered Merlin's disapproving glare at his words, "I can conquer the world with this sword." But had there not been sadness in the gruff wizard's eyes also? Disapproval that the young king was more enraptured by the sword than the scabbard. Disappointment that the chosen one delighted more in the destructive prophecies of the gift from the Lady of the Lake than its healing powers. "But I listened to you, Merlin. I took your counsel. I tempered my hunger for battle and glory with the mission to ensure the sword's power served the common good. Were you not pleased as I grew to full manhood, that I did not make the same mistakes as my father, Uther?" The tears flowed freely now, down Arthur's blood-streaked cheeks and into his gore-soaked beard. He imagined they washed the blood away, that the grey of his whiskers was not visible to the newborn son. An old fool weeping for his loss. "Oh, Merlin, I lost the greatest possession in the world. I have lost Camelot, the brotherhood of the Round Table, the peace and security of Albion." His vision hazed, and pain flared in his skull. He shifted, averted his eyes from the light, and felt the spear thrusts of warrior spirits from his backrest. He shivered, felt coldness steal into his body as his life fluid leaked away. Now the feelings of guilt, regret, and pain at the betrayal subsided. Numbness, emotional as well as physical. The sight of the still, mangled corpses and motionless, broken bodies of the Brotherhood of the Round Table neither disturbed nor pained him. He no longer felt the hatred that had fueled his savage spear thrust into his bastard son's abdomen. Like his knights, Mordred was still, at peace. Still, motionless. Just as we were, before the serpent caught the sun's rays, forced Kay to unsheath his sword and attempt to strike it. How ironic that a serpent had brought about another fall of man here on this plane, just as in Eden, a snake had unleashed cataclysm. The parley had progressed well, Mordred content with Arthur's offer, and would buy the king the time to replenish his forces to hold back the chaos that Albion threatened to slip into. A flash of steel, quicksilver in the spring sunlight, and the message was clear to Mordred's knights. Betrayal. God hides his face from the battlefield. The serpent is now 5 paces away. Its sightless eyes and pale, translucent scales made Arthur frown. This was no adder, surely. In truth, more like a fat, bloated worm freed from grave soil. Its head twisted to the corpse the raven had vacated. Arthur's son and murderer, the usurper Mordred, lay in blood that was as black as his armour. The spear driven into the pretender had seemingly spilled ichor onto the earth rather than blood, as though Mordred's life fluid was a physical manifestation of the darkness that possessed him. The serpent's tongue flicked once again, sensing the corruption in the air, and the snake shot forward like a lance, no longer a sidewinding reptile, but a sickly white, otherworldly missile. Wrapped around the broken spear shaft, it writhed and turned inwards, widdershins, angling closer to the wound in Mordred's abdomen. The blood darkened further, became a liquid blackness that sucked all trace of dawn sunlight, and to Arthur's tortured eyes, the very sky darkened, the sun hiding from the sight of this unholy act of resurrection. For Mordred now stirred, his muscular chest rising and falling as he learned to breathe again. The blackness of his armour was indistinguishable from the ichor that poured in great waves from his stomach wound. The gash undulated and formed new shapes, like the grinning, toothless maw of an ancient witch, or the leering smile of Morgana, who imparted her love of battlefield violence and chaos into her son. Arthur groaned with the memory of his beguilement, how Morgana had sowed her womb with his own seed. My only heir, a veritable serpent! Feeling returned to Arthur, one of revulsion, the sensation he was in the presence of something far more evil than his son had ever been. What the serpent did next made him scream. But it was a cry that had no voice, tore from his inner being. It would be heard in only one place, and only one individual could hear it. The serpent thrashed in the black void, a pale tongue in the mouth of chaos. Hissing became vocalized sounds, words uttered in a human female voice, familiar and horrifying. And it said, God hides his face from the battlefield. if you like that, get a copy. I think it's still in print. It's a double narrative story. It alternates between Arthur and Bedivere, the Merlin imprisoned by Nimue, and back again. So, 20 minutes. I think that's all the time Joe has allowed us. So if you'd like to get in touch, my website, which I'm ashamed to say hasn't been updated for a long time, but I will get round to it one day, is archivesofpain.com. I also have a YouTube channel which I do occasional readings on, so please feel free to subscribe on that, or say hello to me on Facebook or Twitter. Cheers. Enjoy the summer, and may you all survive the plague, prosper, peace and blessings to you and your loved ones. I hope to see you soon.